Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another evening of Apologia. My name's Eric. I'm going to give you just the lay of the land for what this evening will look like, and then we'll get the show on the road. So first and foremost, let me tell you where the bathrooms are and where the water fountain is, okay? The water fountain is right there on the other side of that wall, and the restrooms are terribly inconveniently located. Men's restrooms on that side, women's restroom is on that side. We'll have an intermission halfway through the evening. If you need to avail yourself of those resources, but in the meantime, if you need to kind of slip in and out, feel free to do that. If you will, with me, take a moment to silence your phones. That will help the speakers, the presenters this evening, to stay on thought and answer the questions that you send in. And on the note of phones, that's going to be the way for you to get your questions to us this evening. The last half of the evening, about the last 45 minutes we spend together, will be the panelists responding to questions that you text in over the course of the evening. That number's up on the screens. We'll leave it up for a minute. You can take a picture of it, scribble it down, and that number will pop up a few times throughout the rest of the evening. As soon as you do have a question, however, please text it in right away. Don't wait any longer. The sooner we get the questions in, the higher chance that your question might make the cut. On that note, let me introduce, one more thing. We have the Family Policy Institute of Washington. They have a table out in the lobby. I'd encourage you, if you didn't, on the front end, to take a moment to check out, get familiar with that organization, the resources that they have. Their executive director, Mark Miloscia, is one of our panelists this evening, along with three representatives. We've got Representative Jesse Young from the 27th District, Representative Vicki Kraft from the 17th District. They're both returning guests with us. We're glad to have them back. We also have Representative Robert Sutherland from the 39th District, and then Mark Miloscia, who I mentioned already. And we've decided to give Pastor Alec the night off this evening. He's had a long week, so he's tuning in from home. And our very own Mike Wydell will be hosting this evening. So if you don't know much about Mike, he's been attending Westgate for about 20 years and has spent a long time in the private sector in the technology vein of that. And he's done events just like this all over the world for about the last 10 years. So you will find him to be a pleasant company this evening. So that said, without further ado, let's invite our panelists out and get the night going, will we? All right.
So I'm hoping you guys understand that you get the younger, more upgraded, a lot more hair version of my father-in-law. I know that he's watching. Pop, I love you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I think it's funny that I get to host this event. I think, like Pastor Eric said, I come from a technology, private sector background, and have facilitated a bunch of events like this. I'll admit from the get-go, I talked to our panelists today, I think I represent probably the average person in the audience. As an adult, as a dad, I really didn't pay attention to local or state politics at all. In fact, it wasn't really something I was interested in or really cared about until the last couple of years. I think, like a lot of you, the events and activities of the last couple of years have awoken a great majority of us. And I'm so thankful for forums like Apologia to give normal, average people like me access to subject matter experts talking about topics that I quite honestly just didn't even know where to start. So my hope, kind of the agreement I would love to make with you guys tonight is I just want to know what's going on. What's been different in the last year? If you were here for the first time we all got together back in February of last year, a great majority has stayed the same, and then a great majority has changed. So my hope is we uncover tonight what's the same. Is it trending in a different direction? What has changed? What should we be aware of and informed about? And then most importantly, if you're like me, what can I do about it? Sometimes I feel overwhelmed by what I hear in the news or overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that's going on. And so my hope tonight is for each of you, you give voice to how do I get involved? And I was telling Pastor Eric, I think about it like small, medium, large. What if I just want to do one thing? What's that one thing I can do? And then all the way up. So I'm really excited to have a conversation tonight with subject matter experts that know far more than I do. So I know for some of you, this may be the first time you've attended Apologia, or it's the first time you've seen this group and we've covered this topic. So if I could ask each panelist just to give a basic introduction, who you are, the district you represent, or the group that you represent, how long you've been in office, and what's cool about sitting down with any representative or any senator is they all started out like me. I mean, you guys were all private sector people who decided to do something about changing their environment and got involved. And that's kind of on the large side of things you can do. I'd love to see people run for office out of this audience. Vicki, let's start with you.
Thank you, Michael. Well, I echo that statement. I hope tonight is another opportunity for you to think about different ways you might get involved. But before we get to that point, I am Vicki Kraft. I'm a state representative from the 17th Legislative District, which is down in southwest Washington, near Vancouver, Washington, including some of that area. And I've been serving as a state legislator since 2017, ran for the first time ever for office in 2016. So it just proves if the good Lord wants you in a position, all you have to do is say yes, step up, and he will make it happen. So I ran against 5 other people. It was quite an interesting race. One who started as a Republican and the week of filing decided he was really a Democrat. And yeah, right. So, and I still won. I won the primary and the general election, praise God. So I just want to encourage you on that note, right? Even when things are a little crazy, which we all know they kind of are right now in our state, God is still on the throne. He's in control. So thank you for being here tonight. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you all for showing up here. I'm Robert J. Sutherland, state representative in the 39th Legislative District, which is basically Monroe, the eastern halves of Snohomish and Skagit counties from Monroe up to Cedar Woolley. Like Michael mentioned, I was that guy that nobody knew a few years ago. I'm a biochemist. I did cancer drug development. I researched DNA, and I was so fed up with what I see going on in our state. This is a wonderful state. It's beautiful. We want our kids to do well. We want parents to do well, and we're seeing a lot of the things coming out of Olympia that upset us, that we feel aren't right. And I felt the same way. So I ran for office, and I was elected in November of 2018. My first session was January of 2019. So I'm starting right here in January, my 4th session. And this year, both Vicki and I, we will be up for re-election. Every 2 years, we run in this seat. So that's who I am. I got in the race. Here I am. I'm fighting a good fight. Can't do it without you guys showing up at these meetings. So thank you for being here.
Good evening. My name is Mark Miloscia. I'm the Executive Director for the Family Policy Institute of Washington. We are a Christian policy organization representing Christians, faithful Christians from all across the state, trying to bring Jesus Christ's teachings into the public square and into our government, and trying to reverse this kind of radical secularism that's taking over our schools and our government. And before this, believe it or not, I started off my career in 1999 as a Democrat state representative for 14 years, and then they kind of kicked me out of the party, and I became a Republican state senator, and I did that for 4 years until 3 years ago. Now I'm blessed to serve Jesus Christ full-time, advocating for his teachings and trying to get good folks like these elected and here in government.
Wait, I'm sitting next to a Democrat?
Former Democrat, yeah, former Democrat.
And then lastly, you see an empty seat here. Representative Jesse Young, I'm not quite sure where he is, but I know a couple of factoids that may play a role. One, he lives way down in Gig Harbor, although Representative Kraft drove probably a lot further from Vancouver. Secondly, he has 6 children. So any of you who are parents with more than one child know that kids can provide variables to your life that are unexpected. So if Representative Young comes, just give him a huge applause, make him feel embarrassed that he's late, and we're all just one big family here tonight. I wanted to start off in an area that's probably a soft, easy place for us to discuss, which is COVID. It's a teeny topic that nobody really cares about. I think the thing is, it's a topic that all of us, quite honestly, care about. Whether you wanted to care or not, it's become the top issue. And what's interesting is, where I wanted to start our discussion tonight, is I think I'll reflect my own. I do not reflect the beliefs of Westgate Chapel. I represent the beliefs of Michael J. Wydell. So let me just get that legal disclaimer out. But I've been encouraged seeing Boris Johnson in the UK roll back COVID restrictions. Seeing Ireland, I don't know if you saw that, Ireland just rolled back COVID restrictions. And then some of the brave states in this United States of America starting to roll back restrictions. And it feels like Washington is still in the exact same place that we started in 2 years ago without any progress. So Representative Kraft, I'll just start with you. Since the House and the Senate are back in session, have you noticed, what's kind of the tenor of the environment there? Have you noticed any changes? Just what's it like now that you guys are back, and what is it signaling for what we can hope to expect over the next year?
Well, I appreciate the question, Michael, and I would love to say that, everything was just wide open again at the Capitol. Everything was just the way it was supposed to be. We're not quite there yet. So maybe on a more hopeful note, right now, if you're vaccinated, you can be on the floor to vote. And if you're willing to go through testing, which everybody has to go through testing if you're vaccinated or not, you can be in your offices. I respect that everybody needs to make their own choices, so I'm not going down that path. I'm not in Olympia much. Okay? I was like, well, let's see. This sounds exactly like Joe Biden's mandate. Gee, why am I going to do that? No thanks. I'm not playing your game. So I am part-time in the district, obviously, quite a bit, and up in Olympia when I need to be for meetings, for off-site meetings as needed. But the whole emergency powers reform still needs to happen. Hasn't happened. I could get into a lot from last session. I won't. There were some motions made from the floor that were trying to bring bills for emergency reform up for debate. They were only simple majority votes, so we knew clearly we are in such a minority, the Republicans aren't going to get those things heard, and of course the Democrats voted them down. I really wanted to use the capital budget bond vote because that takes 60% of the legislature to pass a capital budget bond vote, and Mark is shaking his head because I think you were in the Senate when the Hearst water bill came about. And the long and short is the Hearst water rights bill, which doesn't seem connected, but it is, effectively that limited rural water rights back in 2017. And the way that the Republicans, who were in the minority at that time, got the Democrats to take action to change that bill is because the Republicans said, we're not giving you your capital budget bond vote of 60%. So they had to have Republicans on that vote to get their capital budget projects, to bring back all their community projects to you all to say, hey, look what we did. And because the Republicans wouldn't budge and said, no, we're not going to take that vote and give you a capital budget bond, the Democrats didn't get their capital budget projects they wanted. And ultimately, they came to the table then because they had to get those capital budget bond votes, and they changed the Hearst water rights bill, which was critical for us in the minority. That's the only tool we had, the only one as a Republican. And I asked our leaders, both the House and Senate, to take the same tact, and they didn't last year. And so I was very disappointed about that. But the long and short is there has supposedly been a little bit of bipartisan discussion this session. I'm not holding my breath. About Representative Corey has a bill. I don't think it goes far enough, but I signed on to it. And hopefully there will be some movement. And in my opinion, the only way to get that movement is because it's an election year. The Democrats know it. And any friends or family you have in Seattle area, right, you're here, that care about their freedom. I don't care, I talk to Democrats who are over all of this because their businesses were being shut down and destroyed. And if you know them, have them contact their representatives and their legislators. That, and you please do it too, right? But the pressure that the Democrat Party feels this session about emergency powers reform is, in my opinion, the one thing that we have right now that can change it.
Representative Sutherland, your kind of almost entire experience has been through COVID. I mean, if you came into office in 2019, it's been probably an interesting experience for you, probably not the typical on-the-job experience that you'd expect. It's got to be challenging to get to know colleagues and to get to know how the government operates. Are there any extra comments or observations you'd add about your experience down in Olympia and how COVID's affected that? And I know you already as a passionate guy, so I'm sure you have a few choice words about how things are going.
Way to set that up. I served in the session of 19 and 20, so I've been down in Olympia for 2 sessions. My third session, which was 21, they had us work remotely, and now we're into the beginning of my fourth session, and we're working remotely as well. So my first 2 sessions down in Olympia, my second 2 not in Olympia. I can't imagine the newly elected people who were elected in 2020. We've all been to Olympia one day. And that was the first day of the 2021 session, where they needed to have our vote so that we could vote to work remotely. Because the Constitution says we have to go to Olympia to conduct business. They needed to change the rules. And so they got us down to Olympia. Of course, we all voted no, but we're a minority, so they outvoted us, the Democrats. And that was it. They had the cages around the whole the legislative building, keeping the public out. They let us in, we did a vote, and then we went home. It was horrific. I've never seen anything like that. Regarding my attitude, my feelings for what's going on, 2021 was one thing. We're going into 2022. They're furthering this pandemic. I will say this right here and right now. We're not in a state of emergency. We're being lied to. They're using the COVID as an excuse to lock us down to keep your legislators out of Olympia. And I'm not okay with that, if I can express my opinion. So going into this session, they were gonna, if Vicki and I and about 20 others, if we didn't turn in our medical paperwork to the Speaker of the House and her attorney, we weren't allowed in Olympia. We couldn't get into our offices in the legislative building. We can't conduct business. We have to work from home. Got my attorney, we filed a lawsuit. I'm suing right now. I'm suing the Speaker of the House and the top 4 Democrats for what they're doing. Because of that lawsuit, they modified their plan, their legislative plan for this session. And instead of keeping just the 20 of us out, now this is good news or bad news depending on how you look at it, we sued them on unequal access. They're treating us differently. So what they did is they treated everyone equally and they kicked everyone out. That's fine. Madam Speaker, I look forward to deposing you come March when our lawsuit goes to trial. We get to depose them, and we're gonna get a jury of 12, and we're gonna sue them, and we're gonna lock this down. Your legislators are gonna get back to Olympia if we get a favorable ruling. One last thing, if I may. You get me going. That's lawsuit number 1. I got my attorney, and I sat down, we talked. We filed another lawsuit against the governor of Washington State, Jay Inslee, for his illegal actions for locking us down in the first place. We're looking forward to hearing on that as well. I got 2 active lawsuits, one against the governor, one against the Speaker of the House and the Democrats. God willing, we're gonna get a favorable hearing on one or the other or both.
How's that for new blood into our state system? I love it. I told you, passionate guy. Mark, I'm interested from a policy perspective. There's a bunch of bills on the docket, and just to kind of wrap up the COVID piece, I'm sure it's changed the way you're able to help influence the way legislation happens and the pieces that come together in order to do so. How about you share with us just how things have changed and how you've had to augment your way of going about being an advocate for those bills and pieces of legislation that you're in favor of.
Well, Representative Sutherland is right. We really don't have a democracy, access to our elected officials right now. This is a deliberate effort by the folks in power to keep the people out from talking to their elected officials and help influencing the bills. It's only being controlled by the insiders and by Governor Inslee. It is a travesty the way our democracy is completely hidden right now. As he mentioned, we had a chain link fence all around the Capitol last year. And even now, there is no access. I served down there for 18 years, and we'd have thousands of folks down there advocating, pleading with their elected officials, having that kind of public debate. There is no public debate. It's all hidden, done by Zoom. Can you have a discussion over the serious moral and other bills that we have going on Zoom? Of course not. But that's done deliberately. They have the power. They're keeping everybody out. And you see the results going on. It's really chaos down there. One party rule. There is no democracy right now. And you see the way they've treated folks here in Washington State. The greatest attack on religious freedom and religious liberties, the way they're handling the vaccines and the masks and the church closures and all these other rules going out. And I'm not even talking about the firings. Thousands of employees fired from state government, from the private sector. And thank goodness it looks like, President Biden's vaccine passports are going to be shut down. But that's the type of country we have in. You're not allowed to show papers to vote. Anybody can vote, but guess what? You need just to go outside and eat a meal, you need to show your vaccine passport. Unfortunately, that's the type of society we're living in right now in Washington State.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I was sharing a story with the panel in the back office that I had a colleague fly up from Colorado, which is a very blue state like Washington, and she was shocked by what she saw here in Washington. And when my office is down in downtown Seattle, and when she wanted to go out for dinner, I had to tell her, I have to stay north of the county line. That's about as Southern as I've ever sounded. Like, no, I've got to stay north of the county line because I'm not allowed to eat in King County, and that just blew her away. So it just, again, I appreciate you guys holding the banner, leading the march towards ultimately unlocking this society to be free, which we all believe in and support 1,000%. Along that line, it's been interesting to see how topics that are popular within society start to then make their way upstream into Congress, into the House and into the Senate. And I see quite a few bills, Mark, the FPIW has marked as a top priority. And they seem to reflect the interests of what we see in the press, namely around racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. In fact, I think of the 9 that you guys have flagged, 7 are related to that. Vicki, I guess I'll just start with you. How have you seen, especially in this current session, how have you seen the bills being pushed through? It seems like every one of them has some aspect of CRT or some aspect of diversity and inclusion. What is that groundswell meant to what you're seeing and how things are coming together?
Yeah, it's, here we are, especially in this body, right? Love one another as you love yourself. Do unto others as you would do unto yourself. And, at one point we used to hear in, our society, tolerance or equality, right? Well, no, they really didn't want that. And now we're seeing exactly what they want. So when you have things like diversion, equity, and inclusion that are literally included in pretty much any bill that runs from the Democrats. And I'll just tell you, I really appreciate our staff members. There's what we call OPR staff. They're nonpartisan, supposed to be. Anyway, my school choice bill, which I drafted with a little bit tighter version this year, it came back with diversity, equity, and inclusion language in it. I'm like, no, I didn't ask for this. But it just showed me, how much I think they've just been given the MO. They need to work it into every bill they can, right? I'm like, no, I'm on the wrong side of the aisle for you to be doing that. So I pulled it out. But what that ultimately does, and you guys know this, when they are teaching in our schools for, if you're white, you're privileged, and you should feel bad, and you should apologize if you're, white and you've had privilege, so they say. They're teaching this stuff to staff. I mean, that's already been passed in law, last session, 2020? And when I talk to teachers, they're like, oh no, that's actually been going on longer than just since the bill happened. And now, kids are getting this, right, funneled through their teachers effectively. And, everything from whether it's training to staff on these aspects, or it's kids that are getting it kind of secondhand from their teachers in classrooms. This narrative is coming through, and it's dangerous because it literally teaches people racism, right? It teaches you to look at somebody's skin color, and then based on their skin color, decide, are they good or bad based on that, and whether you're gonna like them or not. And in the worst case scenarios, you hate people that don't look like you. That's clearly not what God says, right? And it's, it's dangerous. So it's the very thing it says it's trying to fix, it's trying to do away with racism, it's creating and promoting. So again, good being called evil and evil being called good, right? So speak truth.
Yeah, I don't think there's not one person in here that doesn't want equality. I want equal opportunity for everybody, but when we're forcing equitable outcomes, then we defeat the idea of a meritocracy, which is why this country is one of the greatest countries in the world, if not the greatest. I came from a family who put clothes on layaway and then made money by the fall time to be able to have clothes for school. And so I was able to work my way up just based on having the opportunity to earn my way to where I'm at. And when we create systems that limit that, I don't know a person who's in favor of that. Robert, I know you probably have a few thoughts about where you're seeing this groundswell grow and what it means, especially to our educational system. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just touch on your point. I remember not having a refrigerator in our home, not having food. And this is in America. This is down in Southern California in Burbank in the 70s. This wasn't back in the Great Depression, right? So how dare anyone talk to me about white privilege? Out of high school, I graduated high school, went in the military. I served honorably in the Air Force. I got out of there, earned my degree at Gonzaga University in biochemistry. I've earned everything I've got. Now I'm a state legislator because I'm tired of politicians, and I'm there, and they have to now deal with me. What we have is one-party rule in this state. We have one-party rule, they're in control, and now they've locked us out of the legislature. And they're cramming these bills down our throats. They're coming after our kids. They're dumbing them down, they're dividing them, they're making them distrust each other based on the color of their skin. Every day, I can't imagine what our kids have to go through in school. The lies, what they're being fed. And these poor kids are growing up and they don't know, a little 5-year-old, 8-year-old, it's an adult teaching them this. It's in the book, it must be true, right? I remember going to school and you just assume that the adults are there to teach you what they know, and you're young and dumb and you don't know, so you listen and you trust them. They're dumbing our kids down and they're dividing them. One thing communists know, people that have that encourage governments that control the population. One thing they know, if you can divide the population, you can control them. Because then all you have to do is pit them against each other all the time. Warring factions, they'll never unite to take the corruptors out of office. And that's what they're doing. They're doing it in overtime. They're trying to divide you and me based on color, based on socioeconomic, based on politics, based on whether you've been vaccinated or not. They're dividing us and we're fighting. And we have got to come together and understand where the problem lies, and that's with our government. We have, again, one-party rule in this state, and that's not good. And that one party, they call themselves Democratic, but they're anything but. What they're doing is anything but democratic. And so you and I need to rise up, just like they are around the world. We see the various cities around the world, they're rising up. We need to perhaps do something similar here so we can put an end to one-party rule in Washington State and take our state back.
I'm so grateful to have representatives like yourselves help average people like myself understand what's going on and being able to have people that can influence that process. Mark, when I was checking out the FPIW website, I think one of the things that's really helpful is, I know that we all, and thanks to Representative Young last time he came, I know we can all access any of the House bills or any of the Senate bills, read them for what they are. However, for a person like me, reading through those bills can be really confusing. I don't even actually understand what they're saying. And so your descriptions make it really, really helpful. I was struck by a couple that stuck out, and you were mentioning that, I won't say they were so silly, but they were so ridiculous that they probably won't make it. But I noticed one that was saying that drive-by shootings will no longer be a first-degree murder in the name of racial equity. And then the second one, who you said was just introduced, about mandating that all schools have one day that's dedicated to being remote. Tell me about that. Help me understand what I'm reading. I don't know that I read those correctly, but tell me the process of how those get introduced and how do those move their way into law?
What has happened is, and like I said, I've been down there unfortunately a long time, and I've seen how the legislature has been transformed to a somewhat bipartisan, moderate legislature 20 years ago to one of the most radical, literally crazy and insane legislature with these crazy, scary bills being introduced year by year. So what I would ask everybody, if you're unsure or you want to know what's going on in Olympia, go to our website, fpiw.org, and sign up for our news and alerts, and you can learn about some of these crazy bills. And you mentioned just a couple of ones. Our school system right now is literally falling apart with corruption and violence, gender and sexual ideologies, racist teachings going on, Marxism going on. And if you have a chance, pull your child or grandchild out of the public school systems. They are that bad. Marxist indoctrination centers right now. But some of the bills that are being introduced, one of them you mentioned is because of racial equity, too many blacks are being arrested for drive-by shootings, so we're gonna get rid of that enhanced penalty. It's crazy, and that's what you're seeing going on with shoplifting and petty crime right now and drug dealing. Too many minorities getting arrested, so we're not gonna arrest anybody anymore. We're just gonna let crime proliferate. Our school system, well, the teachers don't like teaching anymore. They liked it by Zoom, so we're gonna give all the teachers, let them go by Zoom one day a week. I mean, for goodness sakes, we had the greatest failure in educating our students the last 2 years, and they're not gonna go back to full-time. And you see, to me, the most scariest bill of the year that was introduced this year was another bill that allow adults and children as young as 13 to have an embryo transplant, surrogacy, or in vitro paid for by your health plan, and they don't have to tell the parents. So if you're single, or if you're in a same-sex relationship, your child, 15-year-old girl, could get an embryo transplant paid for by your health insurance plan. That's what the scary bill is happening down in Olympia. The place has gone crazy down in Olympia. I can list on and on the bills that they have on the criminal justice system or the homeless system or the school system, but it really is scary how our schools and government agencies are being transformed to something that is literally evil in nature. Evil in nature. And so that's why my plea to all of you is be involved. Learn what's going on. Listen to legislators like the two we have up here. Listen to what they're saying, and we have to be involved. Because if we're not involved, the other side wins. Evil wins. We have to go back to what Jesus Christ and his teachings taught us about how we should run our lives and run our communities. That's the answer to all our problems. Jesus Christ, not Marxism, not sexual ideologies, not taking away parents' rights, taking away religious freedoms. It's Jesus Christ.
It's interesting. I had asked Mark to give me a stat for our state. Just on average, the most basic thing, I admit, I'm already getting overwhelmed by all of the things that are going on in Olympia and what can I do? And the number one thing that we all can do is vote. And interestingly, Mark shared with me that about 30% of the state's population abstains from voting altogether. So just, look at this room. That's like this whole right section just choosing not to have a say. And so for people like myself, who I'm assuming a lot of you are like this, I don't know what I don't know what I can do, but what every person has the God-given right in this country to do is to vote, to pay attention to these issues, to have their voice be heard, to help influence the process. And so my segue into our next topic is, in thinking about voting, I just naively believed if I vote, then the process is fair, the process is integrous, and the process is safe. And no matter what your perspectives are on election integrity, I think we can all agree on the fact that when I vote, I want people who are registered legal citizens to vote and for their vote to matter. But it seems like in the last couple of years, this whole idea of voter fraud or of election integrity, I'll position it that way, of election integrity is a really big deal. So Vicki and Robert, I know you both have actually traveled to other states to see their process, and I admit, I don't even know what the process here is in Washington. I don't know how my ballot gets validated. Could you help us understand what the process is currently, and why did you guys travel to Arizona and to other places to take a look, and what does it mean for how we should think about election integrity moving forward? Vicki, I'll start with you.
Well, we should be able, everybody, no matter who you are, no matter what you think, if you are here legally, U.S. citizen, right, and you're voting legally, you should be able to feel confident that your vote, which is really your voice, is being properly counted and heard. Can we all agree on that? Yeah, right? So this should clearly be an easy bipartisan, nonpartisan issue, you would think, right? So, well, I would, oh yeah, that's the hope. And that's really where we need to get to. I know my colleague, Representative Sutherland, has a lot he'll add as well. We could spend the whole night and probably next few weeks and months on this, but a couple of things. One, when we were back in November 2020, right, in the middle of that general election cycle, and the big, I'll say, kerfluffle came up with Pennsylvania, right, and their court saying, the judge saying, oh, we're going to allow mail-in ballots because of COVID, right? COVID became the reason for everything. So we're going to allow mail-in ballots, and we're going to allow this and that and the other. And those became clear, quick red flags to the American people. I don't know about my colleague, Representative Sutherland, but for me, it probably was the very first time that really clearly I went, all the issues that they're bringing up and that are clearly problems, we already do in our state and have been doing them for a little while, right? So everything from mail-in ballots, that's been a thing for quite a while. Same-day voter registration went through in, I think, 2018 or maybe 2019, but so you can literally go in. If you need to register to vote, you can walk in up to 8 p.m. on the day of election to your county auditor's office and register to vote and vote. Really? How do you really validate that that person is who they say they are and where they're supposed to be in that county? So those are just a couple of things. Early lead times in voting, late past election counting. There's so many things. No auditing, no forensic imaging, all these things, right? The audits that we do, there are audits, but they're very minimal in nature, very minimal. So the bottom line is there's a lot of opportunity to close gaps, and we need to do that. Representative Sutherland has introduced some legislation, which I appreciate, and I co-sponsored. I'm actually finalizing this comprehensive election integrity bill, which addresses some of those things, but takes a little bit broader look and incorporates some of the recommendations out of the Arizona audit, takes some of the aspects of a bill dropped in Michigan. One of the things is a state audit board that's created and will be kind of another checks and balance point. I also incorporate the state auditor a lot more. Someone will go, well, great, what does that do? Because it's still same flavor, right, of the majority party. It's another person to keep accountable and also tries to move more of it back to the local levels. And so I share those things as quick snapshots to say, you all especially, right, as the public, holding local electeds and us, right, but you can reach your local electeds especially, the more that we can get back to local control, I think is the best thing for our citizens, right? Because you grocery shop with these people, you see them at the movie, you can reach them versus those who are in Olympia or far away hidden behind their Zoom curtains. So I'll just share that. I mean, we have to get back to real election integrity. The governor's threatened, and I'm sure Representative Sutherland will continue on this, but some of you may have heard a couple weeks ago, the governor literally threatened that any legislator who is promoting misinformation about the elections and election processes in our state could be charged with a gross misdemeanor, right? And he basically said, and I encourage all legislators to forcibly denounce any such actions by legislators who would try to spread misinformation about our elections. And I would just say, Governor Inslee, what truth are you so afraid of coming out in the public that you feel you need to silence duly elected representatives of the people and try to silence us? We won't be silenced. I'm very confident that I can speak for Representative Sutherland on this. And I know myself, so we won't be silent. We will be standing up for the people and get involved in your local county party. I know the Republican Party is working hard on this to do canvassing efforts, to just check that ballots that were sent out, did they really reach the real intended people? Did they go to addresses they weren't supposed to? Were there anomalies? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. But get involved, reach out, and we can help you get connected as needed.
I think this matters so much, especially on a local level. I don't know if you guys have started to pay attention how close a lot of the races are for even the city of Edmonds for these positions. 100 votes makes all the difference between us having one mayor and us having another mayor. So Representative Sutherland, let's not give out misinformation. So why don't you clear the record? What is the process as it currently stands? And then what is your bill trying to address where there are areas of opportunity? Let's be as neutral as possible, just to make sure that we are obeying the governor's orders. I'm saying this tongue in cheek, everybody. But help set the record straight. And then obviously you've introduced some legislation. Tell us about your bills and what they're trying to fix.
You're just trying to trigger me, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that what this show is all about? Let me touch on a point that you made earlier, if I may, and then remind me to get back to that. You said a couple of years ago you pretty much trusted the system. Same here. 2-3 years ago, I would have never guessed that our elections were as bad as, our election process was as bad as they are now. Watching, y'all recall the 2004 gubernatorial race here. There might be some of you too young to remember that. That's the first time I actually saw it, and this is before I had anything to do with politics. This is my biochemistry days. I'm developing cancer drugs, and I watched that race, and I just thought, no way. And it just so happens, you remember they found that the last, after recount, and then they found yet another box of ballots in a trunk of a car. That's my county auditor in Snohomish. That's who's running our elections here in Snohomish. So, watching the 2020 race, that again was on a national level, not necessarily here in Washington State, but on a national level, again, it was like, that's obvious. There's something terribly wrong with the system, right? And it's obvious. That set me on a crusade, if you will. Representative Young and myself went down to Arizona to kind of look at their systems. We met with the CEO, Doug Logan of the, was it Cyber Ninjas, doing the audit down there. We learned a lot of information down there. Representative Kraft, myself, and Representative Clifford then went to South Dakota to the Cyber Symposium put on by Mike Lindell. Am I allowed to say that, or is that too controversial? Did you see what the press said about me for going there? Did you? Yeah. Seattle Times, Everett Herald. Rep Sutherland uses taxpayer money to go to some cyber symposium, election fraud thing. They're hammering me for doing that, but go ahead, I don't care. So I didn't fully understand how our election systems work. And so in the last, 9 months, I've not stopped work. This is my time off. We go to session, then we get 9 months off. I haven't stopped working a single day in my 9 months because this is, every day I learn something new and it's frightening. Do I have time to get into one example?
Absolutely, please.
Yeah. So one example of many, and some of you may know this, many of you perhaps do not. One of the things I've learned out of many, when someone comes here on a work visa or a student visa, or people that come here that they're undocumented, they want a better life, they come here, but they're not legal US citizens. When they go in to register to get a driver's license at the DOL, Department of Licensing, they're automatically or put on a list of registrants that is then sent to the county auditors. And I asked the DOL, I go, well, do you check for legal citizenship, before you send them off to the county auditors? They go, no, it's just automatic. If you get a license, you're sent off to the county auditors. So I requested a Zoom meeting with my auditor, Garth Fell, up in Snohomish County, and I'm talking to him about this. I go, well, surely you check the legal status of the registrants that you get from DOL and other governmental agencies, correct? He says, well, no, I can't. RCWs prohibit it. As long as the information that came to them matches what the auditor has, one of three pieces of information, a driver's license number, last four of Social Security, or a state ID card, as long as that information matches what they have on file, they're automatically put on the registration rolls. None of those three pieces of information verifies the legal status of a citizen, of the individual. And I go, well, Mr. Fell, I go, well, if you can't check the legal status of the people and you're putting them on the voter registration rolls, that's a violation of our law that says to vote, you have to be a legal US citizen. He says, my hands are tied. I go, well, how many votes are we getting in Snohomish County that are illegal from non-US citizens? And trying to cover his tracks just a little bit, he says, well, not many. How many? I don't know, he said. I go, neither do I, and neither do you. And it's for reasons like that is why I'm that close. I need your support. I need some other signatures on my letter. I'm that close to calling for a full independent forensic audit in Snohomish County. We want to know.
I just want to make a quick comment and take this opportunity that Representative Sutherland has so nicely teed up. I would like to encourage our new Secretary of State that was appointed by the governor after our Secretary Kim Wyman, who is supposed to be a Republican, was drafted by Joe Biden to go be on his election security team, and she accepted. Okay, do you think we have problems? Just going there. Okay, so I'm going to invite our new Secretary of State, Hobbs, to take this very simple issue of U.S. citizenship, and if you want to help work for that process of election integrity and just tighten things up for all the people, we can easily get your help and ask for it to just make sure that proof of U.S. citizenship is required, is fully checked, and is properly documented. That's easy. And I have the list in my new bill coming out this week. You can find what those pieces of information are if you're not so sure yet. Thanks.
Yeah, you got my blood pressure up now. I need to inform you all because, again, I didn't understand this a couple of years ago. You know how you get a ballot and you've got like 2.5 weeks to turn that in. Now, you all, I assume most of you here vote, but those people that are not legal US citizens, I get calls from them all the time. Facebook messages, emails. They get a ballot in the mail and they're terrified. They're not here to corrupt our election systems. They're here because they're going to our universities or they're working. And they get a ballot and they're like, I can't vote. I'm not a citizen. I got a ballot. How does that happen? What do I do with it? And if they understood how close they were to being perhaps prosecuted, now here's the point I want to inform you. Get your ballot in the day or two you get it, and here's why. Our current election system is such that the first ballot in under your name is the one that's counted. If someone were to vote in your name and got the ballot in before you do, and then you turned yours in, I don't know, day of election or whatever, and you call in to see if they got your ballot, it's gonna show, yeah, we got your ballot and it was counted. You're good. You have no idea whether that was your ballot or someone else. Now, how easy is it for someone to vote in your name? You go up to the county auditor and say, hey, I'm John Smith and I lost my ballot. Can I get another one? No ID required. They give you a ballot.
You can print it online too.
You can print them online. You can print them off your own printer. You just go in, you tell them you lost your ballot or your dog ate it or whatever. You give them a name and you get a ballot in their name. Now, all those people that are here on work and student visas, undocumented individuals, I call it a credit limit in our registration rolls. So I don't know how many of those there are. I don't know. That's why we want to do an audit. But it's a credit limit. So the people that are cheating know this, and they're going in and they're getting ballots in all these people's names and they're voting. And guess who's not going to check to see if the county got their ballot? The dead people, the student visas, the work visas, the people here that are undocumented. They know they didn't vote. Why would they take the time to go see if their ballot was counted? So it's showing up, and this is one way that they are taking advantage, cheating, if you will. And yes, Governor, I've got the proof, and we want an audit if you're watching. And go ahead and pass the bill to keep me from doing what I'm doing. Go ahead. On the House floor, I'm gonna call it election fraud. I'm gonna say we got the proof, and when you pass it and you sign it, I'm still gonna say the same thing. Go ahead and prosecute me. We've got the proof.
Representative Sutherland, I don't know if you have a nickname, but Firebrand feels real appropriate right now.
Seth Keshel, General Flynn's data analyst on a national program, called me the fire-breathing representative. So there's that.
There we go. We're coming into just about the break for the first hour. I know there's been a message flying across the screen to make sure you text in your questions. Obviously, we want to use the time in the second hour to make sure that the specific questions you have, and I hope that I've teed up the fact that I don't know much, folks, but I'm asking questions that I'm just curious about, and I'd love you guys to do the same. I like to keep things really, really simple. And I think as you've heard from my own testimony, I don't know that I'd ever run for office. Maybe I'll run to be the mayor of Edmonds sometime in the future, but that feels real lofty. So if some of you are like me, I like to think of things in small, medium, and large. I would assume 80% of the room is thinking small. So let me give you a couple of action items. A small thing that you can do to make a difference in your community is A, vote. Think about that. 30% of this audience on average won't vote and won't have a say in what happens that directly affects your life. The other easy thing on the small menu here, if this is McDonald's, they're not a sponsor by the way, is to sign up for the FPIW newsletter. Again, I try to go to the state legislature website and read the House bills and Senate bills, and it's really, really confusing. FPIW does a great kind of cheat sheet view for you to understand what's going on and what you should pay attention to. Okay, if we move to the medium session, Ginny, I'm gonna tee you up. If we move to the medium way that you can start to get involved is after the break, I'm gonna have Ginny, our very own Ginny Chapman come up, and she's going to facilitate a workshop here called Olympia 101, which is just explaining like, how do these things work? What's the process of government here, and how do I get involved? What are the ways that I can be effective and used in whatever the way the Lord would deem? So that's a great medium-sized opportunity that's coming up, and I'll have her talk about it after the break. And then lastly, I'd ask these folks, what's a large item of a way we can get involved? And we'll go from large to extra large, right? So large would be, my brother-in-law and I started to talk about, we should just start attending the city council meetings, the school board meetings. I think a lot of us would say, yeah, I should get involved, and then none of us do. The kind of the plus side to COVID is if you're scared to be in a room where there is a school board or there's a county meeting, now they're all Zoom. So I think we've all tuned into like 1 million Zoom meetings by now. And so for us to start understanding what conversation is going on with our school board and our city council is a great kind of large size item. As we move towards the extra large, I think you've all heard the testimony today of each of these individuals deciding, you know what, I want to do something about what's going on. I want to help write our future. And so I'm sure each of them would love to talk to you afterwards about how to become involved and how to at least be involved with the campaign. Start there and start to work your way into running for public office. But small, medium, large, I'm hoping you guys are writing down a few ideas because again, I commit to at least signing up for the small things. I can do that literally when I leave this event today. So with that, we're gonna take a 15-minute break. Again, send in those questions that you'll have for the panel over the text number. We'll come back in 15 minutes. We'll have Ginny talk to us about the Olympia 101, and then we'll tackle your top questions and hopefully give you some good answers. All right, with that, let's take a break.
All right, folks, we are back from intermission. So if you're in the restroom getting some water or out in the lobby, I'll give you a minute to wander your way back in. A few things before we get to the Q&As. We have, and we promise not to abuse it, it's really just to keep you abreast of the upcoming Apologias, but we have a mailing list. The information for that will go up on the screen behind me. Also on the website, you can find past, we record all of these, so you can go back and rewatch things, get a little more information around the edges, but you can get on the mailing list, especially as different guests come and you may want to plan your evening to get here even earlier to get seats, et cetera, so forth. Just a great way to stay in the loop there. We run Apologia entirely on donations and the kindness of our membership here at Westgate Chapel. So by no means, if you call another church home, do we want to presume upon you or impose upon you in any way. But our heart and our intention is to always make these free to the public. We don't want to have to charge people to come in and be a part of these conversations. So if you would be inspired or would care to give, the instructions for that are on the screen behind me. I would be immensely grateful for your support. It's what lets us keep doing this every month, which is quite a pace to keep these conversations going and keep these guests coming in. So appreciate your support in that way. Ginny, would you join me? I'm gonna grab a microphone for you. Ginny is a member of our congregation here, and she is running on Saturday, February 5th, is running a workshop that Michael mentioned just to give us the 101, how Olympia works, how it can be involved more. So would you give us just your kind of spiel on that?
Yes, thank you so much. Well, we're very excited to have the first opportunity that FPIW is now making available for this area, Olympia 101. And this will be February 5th. It's a Saturday morning, starting at 9 a.m. until noon. It's just a one-time short day where we're going to look at all the things that we've been talking about here. Thanks so much for mentioning the small, medium, and large. What we found out is just the fact that we can get together and have a place to talk and have a discussion format is so helpful and encouraged. And if you've ever thought that you were the only person that was confused, I hope by now you know you're not alone. And that's another reason that we're going to be getting together. We'll have a chance to have a little bit of some breakfast items and coffee and tea, but then we're going to hear from Elizabeth Dahl, who's on the staff, and Mark will be there, and we're going to talk about the process of how a bill becomes a law, and then we're going to become less intimidated. We're going to show how you go on the websites, how you make your voice known, and why it's so important. Even though we individually feel like my voice doesn't count, we're going to find out that it does count. And think of all the people that we have here today. If each of us did one thing, that's hundreds of information bits that the people in Olympia have, and where they're used to not hearing from the citizens, they're going to be hearing, and that gets their attention. So mark your calendars for Saturday morning, February 5th. You can sign up on Realm if you're a member of Westgate Chapel, or call the church office and let us know you're coming so we can have what we want to offer with you that morning. And one more thing, we're going to have people who have done the information gathering of how to be involved with the city council and the school board. And what we would love to do is have a group of people perhaps come out of that will work together and help each other stay encouraged. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. We, the Christian people, have been disengaged for a very long time. We have some catching up to do. But it's going to take patience, it's going to take encouragement from each other and prayer, but we know we can make a difference.
Thanks, Ginny. Okay, before we get to our Q&A time together, we've got just a brief video to watch to keep you up to speed on the next few apologias that we have coming, the dates, the times, the speakers, and the subject. So let's watch that together.
there's basically three different approaches to the interface between science and religious belief. One is the idea that the two are in conflict, and that was the kind of dominant view that came out of the late 19th century. Most historians of science now reject that. It's very simplistic. Another view is the Stephen Jay Gould view, is that science and faith occupy non-overlapping realms of inquiry. The Galileo aphorism was science tells you how the planets go, not how to go to heaven, or how the heavens go, not how to go to heaven. But the theory of intelligent design, I think, shows that that's also simplistic. There are many scientific questions and religious questions that are completely separate, but there are some questions that both science and religion speak to. And my view is that when they speak to the same questions in the same way, that there is actually far more agreement than people realize. In fact, substantial agreement. For example, the origin of the universe, we now know, had a beginning, or the universe had a beginning. And this is one of the first words of the biblical text, that there was a beginning. So that's a point of agreement about the same issue. Is the universe finite or infinite? Both science and religion are now telling us the same thing, that the universe had a beginning. Intelligent design is telling us that life and the universe were designed. And that's something that you would also find affirmed in the theistic religious traditions. So that's a point of agreement about a special question, in this case, about the origins of life. So I don't say that science and religion they have many areas of specialized inquiry. There are different questions that each address, but there are overlapping areas of interest. And increasingly, what we found is that there is increasing agreement as we understand the science better, and as we get better, more sophisticated biblical interpretation sometimes as well.
And look, they come up with these different, the religious right was kind of a title that they thought was derogatory, but then it was embraced as a badge of honor. So now they've come up with Christian nationalism because it has negative connotations. As long as there are Bible-believing Christians in America, they will be involved in the government of their country. We're called to be as such. Now, again, it's not because our hope is in government, it's because we're to be an influence upon everything around us.
Because even in the midst of destruction, of critical race theory, of an absolute lie that's being perpetrated upon our children, Marxist doctrine, of filthy literature being pushed upon our children, and they're told that they're supposed to read it for their education, or really, or all the rest that is happening right now, the mandates. The government is violating our inalienable rights. They're taking away life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which means, our founders wrote, the pursuit of your ability to earn a living and to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Yes, even now, our government is taking away people's rights to earn a living. Those are inalienable rights under our Declaration of Independence, which means government didn't give you the right to life. Government didn't give you your right to liberty. Government didn't give you the right to hold a job and enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Well, can I just commend you on just the number of questions and the thoughtfulness in it? I wish we had another couple hours, maybe you don't, but I'm really enjoying myself up here. So we're gonna try to cover at least the major topics that seem to be a theme coming through. I think the top one, we'll start with the first issue related to COVID, is there have been a bunch of questions about a couple of different things. So let's tackle the first one, which is, now with more than however many days of emergency powers that have been given to our governor, what's going on to provide a check or a balance to that to ensure that it's not endless? So, I mean, you guys are inside of the actual buildings where these things are being discussed. What are the conversations that are happening? What is Washington State's approach to ending this at least emergency status? How do you help a normal person like me understand what's going on?
Well, we need to continue to put the pressure on the elected officials, and I will say leaders in particular of both parties. There's, supposedly been some conversation. I say supposedly because, we hear that there's some conversation, and then, we hear, well, but it's really not going anywhere. So supposedly there's been some conversation. I don't have the bill number up. I should probably looked. But Representative Corey, who is a colleague of Representative Sutherland and myself, he, this session, has introduced an emergency powers reform bill that I would argue, I like my version better last session because it's very comprehensive, and it requires, after 14 days of emergency power for the governor, after that, to continue emergency powers, it takes 60% of both the House and the Senate. Not a four-corner leaders deal, right? Then that's an oligarchy. And that's effectively what we have right now in law. So regardless, we need some real movement. And the way to get there, in my opinion, is utilize the 2022 elections. The Democrats are feeling that heat. Get as many people around Seattle, their base, to call and email and put the pressure on them for reform. Because the bottom line is, if we don't have real checks and balances going on, clearly we all know we're not in an American form of government right now. This is communism that we are living under. And I'm gonna look forward to Representative Sutherland giving his take on it more from the judicial branch side of things. Because that's it. You've got two avenues right now. Well, that's not really true. There's a few more. But you've got legislative, which I would argue is not potentially going to give us a lot of movement unless we get people around Seattle calling their legislators. And you guys do it too, right? Volume matters. Calls, emails. Judicial's another piece. And then you have two options left, in my opinion, and that's either a civil war, which we candidly really, I'm not hopeful, I don't want to go that route, or the best option for us is, with God, we have the majority, and God can do anything. So praying, fasting, right? Those are the real things. I want to commend Jeannie Chapman. I've been blessed to be on some of her prayer calls in the past, and I just thank you for helping to help believers, right, get engaged. So thank you very much for that.
Please raise your hand if you know how to go on the government's webpage and find bills to see what committees are. Okay, there are several of you. Not everyone here knows how to do that. If you can share with one another how to do that, and however you decide to do that, so that everyone knows how to go on there and look at bills. Because the bill she just mentioned, and Rep. Kraft, do you have the bill number? Do you recall that? 5909. Thank you. That's the Corey bill? Okay, so 5909, I believe. Get on the website, chime in, find out what committee it's in, call the chairman, send an email to the chairman. When you get up and you get your cup of coffee, do it in the morning, do it in the afternoon. 100 or 200 or 300 doing that twice a day, once or twice or 3 times a day means a lot. It'll fill up their inboxes, leave voicemails, it'll jam down their phone systems. This may work or it may not work, but it'll get their attention. It'll get their attention. And if we have thousands of people doing this, it will get their attention, and maybe then they'll say, you know what, let's at least give it a hearing. We can always vote it down, right? And once it gets a hearing, then we show up to the hearings if they allow us back in these committees. We show up in mass. I've seen this in the past. When a bill against the hairdressers 2 years ago, they showed up in days in mass, and the Democrats just pulled the bill. They pulled the bill, so they won. Can I touch on my bill that I failed to mention real quick?
I was going to ask you a question to segue into that, but just take it. Go.
It's a vibe. So while you're calling on that bill, we were talking about election integrity a minute ago, and I failed. I get all excited, I guess. I failed to mention the bill that I have. House bill, so HB 1796. That bill will require anyone on the voter registration rolls to have demonstrated they are a legal U.S. citizen to be on the rolls and to be able to vote. You guys, it's sitting on a chairman's desk right now, and it doesn't have a hearing in committee. It's just sitting there. I've done what I can do, but I'm one person. 1,000 people calling them daily wanting a hearing will mean a lot. So that's to help clean up our voter rolls. Real quickly, what it'll do is wipe everyone off the registration rolls, and you have to come in and re-register. And you have to follow the procedures of an enhanced driver's license, which verifies your US citizenship, your legal citizenship, and then you get back on the roll. So all the dead people resting in peace are off. All the people without registration, or excuse me, work visas, student visas, people here without documentation, automatically removed from our voter registration rolls. And only legal US citizen will be allowed to be back on. That one bill will do that, but it's not going to, thank you.
So I know there are a few of you taking notes, which I appreciate. The website to look up any bill in the House or the Senate for Washington State, it sounds a little long, but it's actually pretty simple. App, so app.leg, short for legislation, so app.leg.wa.gov, G-O-V. So that's app.leg.wa.gov/bill info, BILLINFO. What was your bill again, Representative Sutherland?
HB 1796.
I'll look it up. 1796. Okay. Another question relatedly to all of this, and Representative Kraft, I know this is of interest to you. It's hard as a lay person to understand what is truth and what is not, especially when things get labeled as misinformation. But there have been a bunch of us who have paid attention to some of the things that are being constructed out in Eatonville, and then there was a rumor about the health board, the state health board, and that there was something on the agenda about essentially the equivalent of a quarantine camp, but then that was labeled, even though I saw the agenda that it was on, and then that was struck from the agenda. Can you help clarify what transpired with that whole situation? And was it the kind of rise of the populace and the response to that really struck that off of that agenda?
Yeah, it was. In my opinion, it absolutely was. So the Washington State Board of Health, which really, here it is. Normally it's a body that sits kind of off on its own, right? It's not part of the legislature, but they have a lot of influence in health mandates. And I don't know how many of you heard a couple of weeks ago, they held a meeting and they put out this agenda that was very vague, and it talked about vaccine mandates and isolation, quarantine, and it cited a WAC, which is a Washington Administrative Code, and those are created by agencies. So they're effectively like law, but they don't go through the legislature. Agencies create them. And at any rate, that WAC, they just gave a very general, not specific aspect of it, and very general language. And what happened was they put this agenda out with that language, and our phones, emails, everything blew up going, what is this about? Are they gonna mandate COVID-19 vaccines for everybody in Washington State? Are they gonna require that if you don't have a vaccination, that you have to be isolated or quarantined in a facility outside your home? And, oh, by the way, on the agenda legitimately was an item to require, now it ended up being a discussion about this, but looking at whether or not students, K-12 students, would be forced to have the COVID-19 vaccine to attend school. So they put this agenda out. It caused a ton of backlash and uproar, which is fabulous. And effectively, it shut down, really. The Washington State Board of Health, they were inundated. They got the message loud and clear. People are paying attention. And so this is how you can get involved, right? This all happened over social media. If you're not on social media, and it's not my favorite thing in the world, but the truth of the matter is that's where a lot of discussion happens. And so what happened was about, I don't know, I wasn't there because we were in the legislature, doing our jobs there, but I heard that 7,000 people showed up, so let's call it several thousand, showed up at the Board of Health between comments and in person, and basically they backpedaled and said, oh no, we would never, that's not what this was intended for. It was around HIV, AIDS, and some discussions around those. It's follow up on a bill that passed about a session ago. And that had nothing to do with COVID-19 vaccine mandates. If you ask me, if I take this to its worst extreme, and I said to them, and I think Representative Sutherland was on, some of us in our caucus had a meeting set up with the State Board of Health Executive Director and the Department of Health's, I think, legislative liaison, maybe the Assistant Secretary. But the bottom line is, we dialogued and asked them questions about this meeting coming up and the agenda and all of this. And I said, what this feels like, the way that you put this information out so generally, to the public, what they feel like is, are you trying to slide this through on us? And to me, it felt like it was a test to see whether or not the public was paying attention. Maybe they would have done COVID-19 if the people hadn't stood up. But that's the importance of being involved, just being there, your voice, making them aware that you're paying attention and you will hold them accountable. So that was huge. And it shows the power, just like Representative Sutherland said, of being involved and making your voice heard. So we can turn this around. With God, we can do all things.
Yeah, Representative Kraft is referring to a Zoom meeting. So once our phones started blowing up, we got a hold of the Department of Health. We had our staff set up a meeting with them so they can explain to us what it is they're trying to accomplish. The language, like Representative Kraft mentioned, was very vague, open-ended, and it was, frankly, it was scary. And they spent the next, I forget how long the meeting was, close to an hour, explaining to us that it's a misunderstanding. That's not what we meant. We're actually referring to AIDS, not COVID. This was from years ago. And we have no intentions of even talking about COVID or vaccines at this time. And I lost it a little bit, I'm sorry. I go, listen, you've got the public in an uproar. We're here to find out the facts so we can go back out and talk to our constituents so we can calm them down. And when you use language like not at this time, that doesn't help me at all. It doesn't help us. You need to come out there with clear and definitive language saying, we're not doing this. And I've lost track of that because I'm on election integrity. I'm working on a whole bunch of other issues. I think they came out. Did they not come out and clarify it, or did they not?
They clarified that it was not about COVID-19, vaccines or mandates or quarantining or isolation. No, it was HIV/AIDS. But, I still go back to, and you heard it, right? I mean, she did. She said, at this time, I mean, it was like an immediate jump on her. She was like, So it takes keeping people that are, and these aren't even electeds, right? That's what's really scary. Yeah. But stay involved, stay engaged, watch what's going on social media, whether it's election integrity or, school choice, parents' rights in education, FPIW, right? I mean, because you guys, I think, also, I don't know if you put something out about that meeting or not, but I think you jumped into that too. So, see, I mean, it just takes getting involved and staying involved and passing it on, right? It's one thing for you to know, pass it on to others who don't know.
And the medical staff, it all comes back to me now. They did come out and say that they were in discussions on the COVID-19, whether the vaccine qualified under their rules and procedures that they have as a vaccine that they might want to consider later on down the road to have, to be included in the vaccines that children need to go to school. They did come out with a decision that COVID-19 vaccine does not fit the requirements or their definitions or whatever it is they utilize for that to happen. So based on that, moving forward, our kids in school will not, theoretically, per this conversation with the DOH, Our kids in school will not be required to have to get the shot, the COVID-19 shot, against their will or against their parents' will. That only happened because I think it was 7,500 people flooded the phone lines, the emails, and we shut them down.
Yeah, and I also want to say thank you. There were 14 of us legislators. I authored a letter, and it was interesting because this was actually right before everything blew up. But about the day before that, I put together a letter, shot it out to my Republican colleagues, and this was a letter to the Board of Health and the Secretary of Department of Health saying, we do not, our constituents who are parents do not want to see COVID-19 mandates for students in K-12 schools. And I sent that out to all Republican colleagues. Now, granted, it had a short turnaround window, right? We had to move on it quick. But I was thankful. We had 14 of us on it. And the bottom line is, it was all hands on deck, and it worked. So just be encouraged about that.
The family often refers to me as Barnabas, and my Barnabas heart, which is one that always wants peace and for people to feel like they are heard and have a place. I just want to reiterate what Representative Kraft said at the beginning. I frankly, and I know she does, I frankly don't care whether you've gotten a vaccine or not. It's totally your choice. But what we are fighting for is the fact that it should not be mandated and it should be a choice. So if you've chosen to have the vaccine, you are welcome here. I respect your decision. I love you. But we do have to stand up for the rights of not only us as adults, but especially for our kids. So that was so encouraging to see that groundswell make a difference. And there's multiple questions in here about what can we do? And I don't think that there's a better concrete example of what happens when we put our feet to the street and are actually active in this process. Mark, I'm gonna pivot a question to you. Was that okay that I said that, everybody? Okay, good. Make my Barnabas heart feel good. Okay. Mark, I'm gonna pivot to you. No matter where you are on the political spectrum, every pundit, as far left to far right, is talking about this red wave that's coming in the elections, as this is a big election year. Specifically in Washington, especially as a Christian believer, it's always felt like, do we have any shot? So there's a couple of questions about, do you feel like Republicans and conservatives will gain seats in this next election year? I love the desperation in this question. Do you feel like that could ever happen here in Washington State? So Mark, could you, you're somebody who studies this and has a hand in this. Help us understand what's going on this next year.
We have an opportunity this year if people in this room get involved. As you know, this is the interim election after we have a new president, and a lot depends on how good of a job the president is doing at the national level. And currently, Biden has a 33% approval rating right now. So we are starting to see a red wave, but is it big enough to put the House into Republican hands and the Senate into Republican hands? Right now, we're short by 4 votes in the Senate and 9 votes in the House. That's a lot of seats to pick up in our state. So we have a chance. But also, let me bring up one issue, is also, do we elect the right Republicans or conservatives? Are they true conservatives? Will they implement and push? Will they be a fighter for a Christian policy agenda or not? I can say this here, but Representative Sutherland is going to have a primary opponent. He is too much on fire for some folks. And there is a fight going on with the Republican Party. Should it be more like the Democratic Party? Should it be moderate? Should it get along with the other side, be nice, not speak truth to power? So we have an opportunity, but we have to elect the right folks down there. Will Christians be involved in the primary, in the general election? Then we may have a chance to take control. If we get fighters down there and we control both the House and the Senate, then we can have an opportunity to negotiate with Governor Inslee and get all these bills passed, or really put the pressure on him to change and give back some of his power, which we believe he has illegally taken in this state. So I need your help.
Get involved and vote, right?
Yes.
It's that simple.
For 9 seats, it sounds like a lot. You mentioned that it was a lot, and typically that would be. Let me just give you some hope. A couple of times in the recent past, and I'm talking, the last several decades, because of who is in the presidency and the local politics, we've seen 30 and 40 seats switch from the Democrats to the Republicans in one election. It happens. And I'm telling you, I'm relatively new to politics, but I'm telling you, we have a red wave. Unless you guys sit down and don't do anything, if you get out there and help your candidates, donate money, donate your time, if you get out there and help, we're gonna have a red wave, and we're gonna have more than 9 seats necessary. I'm predicting we're gonna have a super majority in the House so that the bills that I'm talking about, when we pass those bills, the governor can't veto them. We're gonna have a veto-proof majority, and that's what we're gonna do this November. Get involved, get involved. This is our year. If we don't do it this year, I don't know where we go from here. We've got a terrible president, in my opinion. The Democrats are scrambling. They're behind the scenes, they're telling us, man, you guys are gonna rock and roll this November. And I say, you don't have a clue, because the people, what you've done to their children, kicking them out of school, firing people because they don't have the vaccine from from their state jobs. You've ticked off not only our side, but your side. Your side's gonna take you guys out of power, and they're gonna give it to us. And we're gonna pass bills that are gonna help us take our state back and protect our children and fight for a better future for our children. We're gonna finally make that happen come November.
Well, and I will just say, echo, ditto. I mean, the bottom line is this is it, right? You heard the non-approval ratings for Joe Biden. And so I will clarify for the record, I'm not actually running for re-election in this Washington. I'm running for election in the other Washington because, down in Southwest Washington, the incumbent Republican voted to impeach President Trump. Not a good idea. So I am the candidate that is on the ballot, the candidate that has a proven voting track record as a conservative and was voted, scored the most conservative rating in the House of Representatives, which is amazing. I don't know how that happened, but I'm sure we were close. I didn't actually look because I know we're close. But the bottom line is by the folks that put on CPAC every year. So they did the scoring in 2020, and I was very honored and thankful to have the most conservative rating for the House of Representatives here. So I'm taking that to DC, and we're going to take Biden out.
Representative Sutherland, I think I'm going to change your nickname from Firebrand to Coach. You feel like a football coach, like everybody's about to run through a wall every time you talk.
Does that pay better than a legislator?
It does, probably. Depends on the university. It's coincidental that my wife is now not in the room because she was like, don't ask any hard questions, but I wouldn't be doing my job. There's a couple of questions on here that represent people trying to do something and feeling like they're not getting heard. So there's multiple people that have said, do our emails to our reps and senators actually get read? I keep sending quite a few and occasionally receive a rubber stamp reply, and I'm not sure that I'm being heard. And my heart goes out to this person trying to step beyond the small into the medium action, right? So my thought was, I'm sure you guys have obviously a Democratic representation in your districts as well. And when you receive emails from an opposing view from your constituency, how do you take in that feedback? How do you take in that response? Because it's not enough to just read this person and then, get everybody riled up. But I thought, let's flip the question and see when you guys get emails from your constituency that feel antithetical to your beliefs or what you believe you're representing on behalf of your constituency, what would you say as an encouragement to people like this who are trying to take action but don't know that it's making a difference?
Well, I will say this. I, as a legislator, have a responsibility to, listen, right, to everybody. And I've met with, transgenders. Clearly, I don't agree with their choices, but I have sat down with them. And in particular, this was, kind of before a conference of sex ed, and it was after the bathroom issue, right? And this is just one example, and it applies to emails too, right? We had our conversation. they put forth why they were there and their concerns. And, we don't want to hurt anybody. We just want to have access, as well. And I said, I understand. And I said, I believe you. And I believe most people would believe you that your intention isn't to hurt people. But I said, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who will take advantage of this new situation and hurt girls in particular. And, we had a very respectful dialogue at the end. Neither of us changed our positions, right? There was a group of them. But I said, I hope, if nothing else, we've had this opportunity to hear from one another, and I want you to know that I'm listening to you. I said, we may still, we're going to walk out of this room, probably not either of us changing our minds, but I said, we can have the conversation. And I've sent emails back to your question, Michael, and I've responded and said, thank you for your question, regarding this issue. And, here's where I stand on this. And I am the same way. I said, even though we may, disagree, I said, hopefully we can agree to disagree. And I want you to know, I appreciate you sharing your feedback with me on this issue. That's really good. So that's how I try to do it. I'm not going to try to placate to everybody. I'm not going to be somebody I'm not. Okay. But I do want people to know that I'm doing the best I can to listen to them.
And regarding myself, there are, there's all kinds of different types of representatives, but basically I'm going to try to put them into two categories. Some representatives there, I'm actually a little bit jealous. They're able to get back to everybody that contacts them. Between their legislative assistant and themselves, drafting a paragraph or several paragraphs on various issues, and they can respond in a timely manner. And that would be ideal if I were able to do that as well. I don't want to down any other representative. That can happen in a timely manner if you're not rocking the boat. If you have time, if you get 6 emails a day. When I make the Seattle Times front page, I can get 10,000 emails. It's a little more difficult to try to get back to everybody. So we have a way of filtering the emails, if you will. If it's a form letter and we get 1,000 of the exact same thing, even though it might have a different name. Hi, I'm John, I'm Jane, whatever. If it's a form letter, yeah, I read one, that's all I'm reading. Another one, if it's written from an individual and it's unique, we put those aside, we try to get to them, and either my legislative assistant or myself will get back to them best we can. And I will just be the first to admit, I don't know how well I'm doing, because I get the volume of emails and phone calls I get is it's overwhelming to me. I could spend my entire time just trying to communicate back with people, and I would never get any work done. So I'm trying to find that balance of how I can make sure I get back to anyone. Has anyone here tried to get a hold of me and I haven't responded? Boom. Okay, thank you, because I was not going to ask that question for fear all your hands went up.
Well, good thing we're not a church in Monroe. There may have been a few people. Yes, I've been trying to get a hold of you for 2 weeks. Yeah, they don't have an accent like that in Monroe. I don't know why I did that there, but that's just how I represent in Monroe. I'm really sorry. You have a fine city. I love you.
Yeah, don't give up your day job.
Yeah. This is my first and last Apologia. Thanks, everybody. Mark.
I was going to say, legislators of both parties, you can get access to them. They will sit down and meet with you. They will listen. But frankly, what has changed in the 20 years I've been involved down there is the parties have really drifted so far apart. 20 years ago, there was 10 Democrat legislators, and I was one of them who was pro-life. There was 15 who were pro-traditional marriage. There was 15 pro-Second Amendment. On, and all the issues, there's a huge moderate conservative consensus, independent type Democrats who you could talk to and convince them to vote away from what the governor wanted, or from the unions, or from the radicals, or whoever. Nowadays, that doesn't exist. Right now, unfortunately, on all the issues we care about, life, family, parental rights, religious freedom, there's virtually no Democrat that will vote differently than the radicals from Seattle. Unfortunately, that's the reality of politics right now. And so that's why we need to engage and change hearts and minds in our communities. That's what we need to do, and then elect folks who represent us. But frankly, the interest groups on the other side, the unions, the gay lobby, Planned Parenthood, they're so powerful. So powerful. And so they don't listen anymore. There's not that swing vote of Democrats that you can get maybe on your side anymore. Unfortunately, they're all of one mind. As you can see in Seattle, they're even getting rid of liberals now. They want these radical progressives there. So liberals are going to be extinct, I think, in Seattle in 5 years. So.
If I can just touch on that point, do not be fooled. If you happen to live in a swing district and your state representative happens to be a Democrat, from their party, and they come to you at a town hall and they show, look, I voted with my Republican colleague on these, 17 bills. I'm a moderate. I'm not one of those radicals that you see. That's a lie. It is a lie. They take the vote in their caucus. They make sure they have enough votes to pass it. They allow their Democrats who are in swing districts, they allow them to take votes with us so they can come back to their districts and say they're a moderate. When they need to, on the sex ed bills, CRT, anti-gun bills, when they need to, it's 57-41, 57 Democrats, 41 Republicans. They are in lockstep. When they need to send a message or when they need to, because it's going to be a tough vote, they do not break ranks. But if it's something that they can let a few of their members off so that they can get reelected, that's what they do. Do not believe them when they come to your town hall saying, I'm a moderate. I voted this way with my Republican colleagues. Don't let them get away with it.
And we put out a voter guide so you can see exactly how the folks vote.
I think I'll bring this to a close with this last question for all three of you. Mark, you made me think about really powerful lobbies and how it can seem like there's nothing we can do. And Representative Kraft, you've made sure to really keep this grounded in the thing that's most important, which we have the most powerful lobby in the world, which is that of Jesus Christ. And we happen to be a Bible-believing, Spirit-led church who fully believes what we pray and intercede into this world makes a difference. I think I'd love to end this on knowing this. Even for folks who aren't from Westgate, we're all here because we believe. My father-in-law always shares a quote from John Wesley, which is that John Wesley would start his day first, pray like everything depends on the Lord, and then act in the day like everything depends on you. There's a specific order. We don't just pray and then just sit and hope that something happens. We pray and then we act on what we believe should happen, and we're led by the Spirit. So, on behalf of the congregation, I guess my final question to each of you is, how can we pray for you? How can we be specific? I don't want to just pray that your life would be good and that you'd find favor. I do want that for you too. But how specifically can we pray for each of you?
Well, thank you. And thank you for the prayers. I mean, the bottom line is, there's no way I could do this job ever without the Lord and, the Lord Jesus Christ, let's be specific, and prayers. So thank you. I think, especially for myself, my biggest prayer is really in this season is that I would know clearly each day what the Lord wants me to do for him, his strategy on how to do it, and then the ability to do it. And in accordance with his perfect will. And sometimes that's, the word he gave me on New Year's Eve this year, literally, I was just sitting there at dinner with my husband and I hear the word patience. And I'm like, oh no. I was like, Lord, is that you? Yeah, I'm like, is this a word for next year? Yeah, and I don't usually, I don't always do that or ask that or get that, but he was proactive and I thought, oh no. But it's good news, right? He's in control. And we have to make sure, the thing I want to just remind everybody about, and the importance, as Ginny knows, and you all know, the strategy is so important, right? David, if you look at in the Old Testament, he asked the Lord in one battle, Lord, should I go up? Should I attack? And the Lord said, yes, go up and I will give you my victory. The next time he was at battle, he said, Lord, he basically said, Lord, should I go up? And the Lord was very specific, and he said, go around, right? And so he had to ask the question, not just, should I fight or not? It was, how do I go about this, Lord? And the how and the strategy is critical. So we all need to be really pressing in this season to the Lord, and just fasting is something, you know, I've come back to just even once a week right now. I say it humbly, it's not whatever. It's just something as Christians in this season I want to encourage all of us to do, because that's where the breakthroughs come, right? We know there's only certain things that will break through by fasting. So thank you so much again for being here tonight, for the opportunity to come share with you and be with you, and just thank you so much for your prayers.
And those that pray for people like Rep. Kraft and myself and others, please keep doing it. There's no way, I'm fully convinced. Why do I get emotional when I talk about this?
Because it's the Holy Spirit.
I'm fully convinced that without your prayers, we couldn't do this. The strength it takes to endure what we endure, we're a minority in Olympia. We're a minority. And there's no way we could endure that without your prayers. And there's no way people like Rep. Kraft and myself and Young and others could be where we're at within the caucus, within this state, if it wasn't for your prayers and God's blessing. We couldn't do it. 3 years ago, you never heard my name. Now there's 1 million people across Washington State know my name. And I'm not doing it to brag. I'm a fighter. I have more than 2 heroes, but 2 heroes I want to mention. Jesus Christ. He's my number 1 hero. He saw some injustices, and what did he do when he went to the temple? Someone yell it out. Flipped over the tables. He got kind of mad, and he went in and he stirred things up. Love that guy. Love that guy. And then Braveheart. If you wonder why I get so fiery sometimes. Braveheart. Scottish. I'm Scottish descent, by the way. Wear a kilt half the time. Love my Scottish heritage. I descend from the ancient Picts. Painted bodies, they were warriors. They fought the Romans when they were over in Scotland. This is who I descend from, if you wonder why I might get a little fiery from time to time, okay? These are my heroes. These are who inspire me, and I take that into Olympia. But don't just pray. We need your prayers, but don't just pray, because the Bible also says, faith without works is dead. And we learned the parable about the good and faithful stewards, if I say, those who buried their talents and those who went out and used them. Do not bury your talents. Do not sit in your seat and just pray. Use your talents, pray, and then get up off the couch and find a way to help. I can't tell you how to help. There's 1,000 ways to help. I can't tell. You're all different. You all have your strengths and your weaknesses. Some have more money than time. Some have more time than money. Find a way. You need to do that. Find a way to get in and help your representative if they're a good representative. If they're not, find a way to get them out of office and get a good one in. And that's one thing you can do. And if you're in a district where it's just a lost cause, and there are those districts, go to the next district over, or go to mine, or Vicki's. Help us fight the fight. So maybe some of us are in a close race. Vicki's gonna be in a close race, and now that they've taken my district and redrawn the lines, I've gone from a very safe seat, fairly safe seat, to I could very well lose this coming August with a primary opponent. I can lose. I have a fight on my hands that I've not seen since I've been in. I need your help, I need your prayers, and I need you guys to have your faith lead you to action. Find something to do to help representatives like myself and others, depending on where you live. And that'll mean a lot going into this red wave. We are going to make a difference. I promise you that, to the best of my ability and what I feel is coming. I've been watching politics for a while now, and what I see coming is going to be amazing. And we're gonna finally have a victory and a majority in the House, and we can start putting a stop to some of watch your language, Robert. To some of the bad things that we see happening right now. So God willing, if we're out there fighting, he will bless our efforts. Please get out there, get off the couch, and give us a hand, will you? Thank you.
What they said is absolutely correct. One thing you also never pray is pray for their families. Their families go through it, the fire also. And so pray for the families of your elected officials, especially those of the champions for you that are fighting the fight and getting slandered and beat up and even knives in the back. Pray for their families.
Excuse me for butting in all the time. I get fired up. When the Seattle Times puts me on the front page or whatever page they put me on, totally mischaracterizing what it is I've said or done, my wife and my daughter get threatened, along with myself. Our lives are threatened. They come after us. I can't tell my wife half the things that I go through on a daily basis. She would break down. She can't. I went into a meeting the other day where I was meeting my primary challenger and the PCOs in the 39th Legislative District were getting together to vote on some certain things. And my wife was almost breaking down as I was leaving. I was on cloud, not cloud. I was looking forward. I'm a fighter. I'm looking forward. You want to bring it on? Bring it on. Okay. So I went with all, enthusiasm. She's, how can you do that? How can you go in there? So I can't tell my wife half the things that I go through. When their lives are being threatened, when it's that bad coming from the Everett Herald, Seattle Times, I just remind them, keep your eyes out. Don't answer the door. If you don't know who it is, call me if something weird's going on. We're under a lot of pressure when you fight like this. But it just tells me, with the governor coming after me saying what I'm doing, he says what I'm doing is fermenting and prolonging the insurrection from January 6th in DC. He said it on his news conference. That's what I'm doing. He's going to write a bill to make what I'm doing about election integrity illegal. And then the Seattle Times, the Everett Herald pile on. And then I get a primary opponent piling on. I've had a bad week or two in the press and in the party. It's been tough. And my family's under a lot of pressure. Anything you can do, we appreciate it. But they have to understand, they started this fight. They picked it. But this guy's going to end it. And representatives like Vicki Kraft, we're not backing down. We're not going to bend the knee to their tyranny. We're going to bring the fight to them, and we're going to defeat them. And they're going to learn what it takes. They're going to learn their mistakes when they have to deal with you and us, because we're going to take that majority back. Thank you guys for being here. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Rise for America. We're going to take our state back.
And
Praise God. He will bless your efforts if we hang together.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Amen.
I don't know if Representative Sutherland is a direct descendant of William Wallace, but now that I know he's Scottish, it's pretty obvious. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight, for your time. Time is the most valuable resource we have. Can we all just raise our hand and commit to praying for our representatives, that the Lord's favor would be on you, that the Lord's wisdom and his instruction would be on you, that his favor in meetings would be all over you, and that words would come out of your mouth that far exceed the confines or the capabilities of your brain, all to see his kingdom here on earth. Amen? Amen. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.